Greetings, friends, and welcome to the recording of our design webinar, the first session in my Worship Design Studio planning retreat for the 2020-2021 liturgical year. We had a great turnout and lively chat, so I'm including a document that has the chat record in it, so you can look at that. And in addition, I made a timeline so that you can find places. If you had to leave early, you can find your place again, or you can just move to areas of interest more easily. I know a lot of people sign up for webinars knowing that they can scan the recording afterwards, and I think that's awesome. So I've made this timeline so you can see what's in it and go to those places and check it out. If you've not registered for the rest of the retreat and planning sessions, I'd love to invite you to do that and join the amazing conversation about what to do and how to plan in these uncertain times. We will be journeying alongside one another in the coming months. You are never alone and you never have to start from scratch. I'm going to be sharing with you in every session ideas for that season, series ideas, ways for you to discern and create your own worship, both for online and in-person worship if and when it comes to that. You can find out more about that at worshipdesignstudio.com/planning retreat. And throughout this webinar, I lay the groundwork for our discernment and design work, getting you ready for our deep dive into the various liturgical seasons. If you're not sure about whether you want to be part of the entire planning retreat and all the sessions to come, watching this webinar or bits of this webinar will give you an idea of the kind of support and education and idea brainstorming that I offer. So thank you for watching, and I pray many blessings on your ministry. Welcome. Welcome to session 1 of the Worship Design Studio Planning Retreat. We have lots of churches who have already registered for the retreat, and we have complimentary guests here today for this session in my effort to make sure that you know that you are not alone in this moment of pivot, of adaptation, and just some very hard work that you have been doing for months now to discern what to do next. And so for those of you who don't know me or new members of the Worship Design Studio or just new to my teaching, my name is Dr. Marcia McFee. I combined a first career in the performing arts with a seminary degree, a master's in theology that specialized in worship and preaching, and a PhD in liturgical studies and ethics, and with an insatiable curiosity about ritual studies and neuroscience. And when you stir all of that together, out pops this love of utilizing all that we know about sensory-rich experiences that form us into persons who worship and work together for a deeply centered spirituality and a better world. That is my passion. Some people say you got a PhD in worship and ethics. But I deeply believe that what we do in worship matters for who we are becoming as communities who make a better world. So I am the creator and visionary of the Worship Design Studio, which is a resource for training worship staff and volunteers for all the worship arts, and a collection of 12 years and counting of worship series for every liturgical season, for every Revised Common Lectionary cycle, 2 years of the narrative lectionary, and many, many non-lectionary worship themes. And we're having fun continuing to add to these series and now producing pre-made and adaptable video liturgy pieces to drop into your online worship experiences. Trying to help you because I know you're working so hard, and I know that video editing and being on camera week after week is not necessarily what you signed up for. And so we're trying to help you in whatever ways that we can, and this is part of it. So as I said, now our new website is a social platform where all the Worship Design Studio churches, both subscribers and free members, can connect and crowdsource with each other. So my goal is education, inspiration, and exhalation. So education and training your folks for all the worship arts, inspiration as a liturgical theologian. I believe it is my vocation to inspire you to messages that you can convey to your congregation through sensory-rich worship. And exhalation is just hoping that you will breathe a sigh of relief because you are not alone and you never have to start from scratch. So that is my main goal. I've been doing these worship design studio planning retreats for 12 years all across the country in retreat centers, and the last 4 years we added live stream. Today's session is based on what we usually do the first night, typically on a Sunday night. We lay the groundwork for planning together and planning ahead. That's one of my mottos in the worship design studio: plan together and plan ahead. We set the stage, we consider the context that will intersect the faith story this year, helping us live our lives with meaning and purpose, with challenge and with comfort. And of course, when considering context in this moment, there is so much to consider that last year and even earlier this year, we could not have imagined that we would be considering. So today we're going to do 3 things. It's a trifecta that is both existential, talking about our existential context and how do we plan ahead in this time when we don't even know what next month is. It's theological and it's very practical. So we're gonna just cover all of those things, talking about what's going on, how that intersects with our faith story, how we can think about structuring the message in this context, and then practical things that we're going to be using all through the retreat, which goes for months this year. We're spreading it out over several sessions so that we can continue to be deeply contextual and meeting the needs of our congregations in the time frame, and assessing what's going on along the way. I actually asked you to find a candle. And so if you found a candle, and most of you are doing a lot of videoing and maybe Zooming from your homes. So I'm imagining you have a candle around. So I'm just kind of stalling for a minute. For those of you who came on right at the top of the hour, you didn't see the slide that says find a candle. So I'm going to stall for just a minute so that you can get your candle. And we're going to have just a moment of devotional with scripture and a moment to light our candles. So let us do that now. Breathing deeply. By this light of Christ, we break open the truth and confess. By this light of Christ, we break open the Word of God and proclaim. By this light of Christ, we break open our hearts and lament. By this light of Christ, we break open our mouths and rejoice. This is a word of God. Thanks be to God. And so one other deep breath. I pray you feel the presence of God in your gathering wherever you are. whether you're sitting with your team virtually or physically. I pray many blessings on your discerning as we continue together in today's session. So friends, today's session, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at why the liturgical year is a powerful structure any year for planning worship, but especially right now. My take on the liturgical year, many of you may follow the liturgical year and be steeped in it and have learned about it and already know about it. That's great. I hope so. My take on the liturgical year really comes out of a unique perspective from ritual studies. I kind of use that lens of ritual studies to look at the liturgical year and how it intersects with our deeply human penchant for making meaning. We are meaning mongers. It is just part of our DNA. We try to make sense of things, and especially in a time when it's difficult to make sense of what's going on, and on many fronts, make sense of how we live our lives, of how we move forward. It is especially important for us to take a look at this powerful structure, the Christian liturgical year as a structure for creating a way to bring the messages of our faith alive. And then we're going to move from that section into what I believe is the number one key to planning worship in uncertain times. This is it's going to be theoretical, but it's going to get practical really quick. And I've been giving a lot of thought to this. In fact, it was part of my discerning about how I was going to do the planning retreat this year, because usually I do a live stream where it's like 3 days of intensive planning. But, even though I could do it because I've done it before, I think we're zoomed out. So we're going to do it in little bites. And so that's another reason. But I've been giving this a lot of thought about how we can plan ahead and plan together in uncertain times. And so I'm going to share with you some of my musings about that and some very practical things that I think can help us. And then the third section today is going to be staying creative and productive without burning out. And you might be saying to me, Marcia, I'm already there. I'm already burnt to a crisp. I get you. I feel you. Last week I hit a wall. I'd been doing pretty good, and I think I shared with some people, and they affirmed that, yeah, every once in a while you just hit a wall and you just go, I want to get off this carousel for a little while. Well, we can't. We have this obligation and this vocation, this call to ministry that invites us to meet people where they are, and that is in this very difficult context right now. And so we need to perhaps reassess how we're doing things, and I'm going to give you some very, very practical ways that you can continue on this journey, even in these uncertain times, with less burnout. And so that will be our third part of today, and that's what we're going to be doing. So why consider the liturgical year, especially now? Let's get into this. So friends, in my ritual studies research, one of the things that we talk about in ritual studies is that from the beginning, as soon as our brains developed in the ways that they started creating meaning, we humans began to find ways to ritualize, in other words, pattern, mark, say this is going on, and do that through all the means of communication that we had. We etched things on walls. We gathered around the fire pit to tell stories. We danced. We did all of these things. We created patterns in order to express our human longing, whether that was longing for a good harvest, or longing for a fruitful community, or longing for a good leader. Whatever it was, we took our human longing, our human yearning, and we began to pattern that into specific ways to express it. That is just who we are as humans. It's part of our DNA. It's what we share with all religions. But this, especially for our faith tradition, It's important for us to remember way back in our ancestral ancient DNA is this yearning to express our longing. One of my research interests is the burial passage tombs in Ireland, and I have been there several times. This is one of them, one of the largest, and it's recreated from the ruins to sort of show us what it would have looked like. It's called Newgrange. It's huge. And ancient people, so this is Stone Age, 5,000-6,000 years ago, built these things to put the bones of their dead in. And they created, in this specific one, they created a passageway, and many of them, no matter what their size, look similar, passageway back to the center of this, where there are these stone bowls where they would put the bones of their dead. At Newgrange, there is what they call a light box right above the place where you enter in, and on the winter solstice, the shortest day of the year, where the light is beginning to return longer and longer days, that light, it lines right up with that light box, the sunrise does, and it goes back into that chamber. And what you see is this amazing symbol of light where there was no light. And in this way, this tomb also becomes the womb of new birth. And light has been, for our ancestors and for us, I mean, think about the acolyte coming down the aisle with the light, right? This perpetual symbol of hope. And that light comes right in and it goes all the way back through the chamber to where they have placed the bones of their dead. And so this beautiful symbol, and this especially, if we think about the times that we're in, and this is not the first time humanity has felt like they were in a place of no light. Time and time again, this happens. We just happen to be in this particular instance of it that's quite acute for us. So much death. Friends, we have over 1,000 deaths in this country alone every day right now. And so we are looking for that hope, for that light. We are praying for that. And so finding ways to enter into the passageway of what feels like death, and then be there and pray for and await the new dawn. The music, for those of you who came on early, I had music going, and it's one of my favorite recordings right now, and that is Christopher Tin's orchestral work, Calling All Dawns. And it's so appropriate, and I listen to that and I pray to it, calling all the dawns, all the light that we can muster, that we can pray for, and for our tradition, Christ our light, to be with us in this journey. So the early rituals, there were seasons and food and rituals of survival and coming of age and procreating and death, and really making sense of all of these things. These were the cycles. Later, the Hebrew people ritualized meaning or happenings. They had an encounter with the holy divine one in the desert, and they would stack rocks, build an altar to mark the place. And this is so much what we still do today. We create sacred space, whether that's in our sanctuaries or like we've been doing. We've been creating sacred space where we can and how we can. We've been encouraging our congregations to have a candle that they light at home, to make a sacred space, so that we know that we as people who have this in our DNA, we can make ritual and we can adapt to whatever situation that we're in. But the Hebrew people, whether they were on the road, in exile, wherever their situation was, they created rituals around community and promise and covenant. The God of all gods was with them, traveling with them wherever they were. Our Christian ritualizing then begins to ritualize a history and a story and identity based on this man, Jesus, and the rhythms of memory and time, and people gathered together even after he was gone, and they gathered around a table with food on it. And they said, do you remember the last time Jesus was with his disciples, when he took the bread and did the good Jewish blessing like a good Jewish rabbi, and And then he said something strange. He said, "This is my body broken open for you." And we retell the story and retell the story, and it becomes our ritual, connects us through all time and space. And so we continue to find ways to make that meaningful, whether we are together in this space or whether we must break our bread through this amazing technology that we have that connects our spirits. The development of the liturgical year is a story of a living tradition that can deepen our present ritual practices. So drawing on the liturgical year is not about just a memory of something, but it is that anamnesis. You use this theological term at the table where past, present, and future are one in this mystical union. Where we know that we proclaim God's love with all the saints, with all who ever gathered around a table. It's a living tradition. Sometimes when I'm with churches who are stuck in their past so much that they have a difficult time adjusting or adapting or moving forward in order to bring that message alive in new ways, I ask them, do you want to be a museum or do you want to be a church? I know that may sound like, ooh, that's pretty radical, Marcia, but it's true. In a museum, we look at objects and things and we hear stories for the sake of what they were then. But in a church, in a living tradition, we have those things and stories and ancient symbols, but we say, how does that intersect with our lives today? How is it living on? You know that word tradition, the Latin traditio, means to hand on or to surrender, not to hang on. It's not tradition unless we hand it on. If it dies with our generation, then it's not tradition because it hasn't lived beyond us. We have to hand that on. It doesn't mean that we don't honor all the ways that we can worship, but it does mean that we have to, and we're seeing that so very much right now in stark relief, that contexts change. And unless we change our ways of telling the story, that story will not get told. I don't know that there's any other time in my lifetime where that has come home to roost in such a powerful way. And churches, people are reporting to me that churches who have said technology over my dead body are saying, oh my gosh, this is keeping us connected. In fact, this, so-and-so hasn't been able to come to church in decades, or in a decade maybe, is able to join us together. So we're looking at some of the blessings of reassessing how we're telling the story. Not to say that all of us are just really looking forward to the day when we can be bodily, physically together, because that is a blessing as well. So the cycle of the first century church was just the week, and the Sunday was the 8th day. It was the Alpha, the Omega, the foretaste of the reign to come, right? It was that cyclical kind of thing that we saw in that tomb, in that ancient burial tomb. That tomb becomes womb of new birth. Sunday is the same thing. It is that renewal of life over and over and over again. And so then the second century church began to celebrate Pascha or Easter, although every Sunday is still considered a little Easter. It was on a fixed date, and it was just a great big festival, a unitive celebration of the whole of Jesus' death and resurrection, and the time par excellence for baptism. And so the early church begins to ritualize these initiation rites and connect it to that story. The middle of the night, Easter Eve, is the moment par excellence. Jesus was dead in the tomb and then rose again, and we too, through our baptism, die to the old and are born again to the new. And yearly, we make this cycle. We remember that we must die to the old and be born again to the new. And so by the 3rd century, the church has 3 big days. You might say, okay, Easter we've already said. You might say Christmas is another one. No, wrong, buzzer. It's actually Epiphany and Pentecost. And as these 3 days, big celebrations, big festivals develop, there's also this time period before each one of these that gets developed that is preparation for the catechumens to be baptized. So Advent originally this time of preparation, not for Christmas, but for baptisms on Epiphany. And Lent didn't originate as a penitential season, but as a time of preparing catechumens for their baptism on Easter Eve, and then Pentecost. The Easter season begins as that time of preparation for new baptisms on Pentecost. And so we see that all of these liturgical seasons can be seen as that preparation for renewal. And I don't know a one of us who doesn't personally and communally, not to mention globally, need to continually reassess and prepare for some sort of renewal, right? It's the way that we stay alive. By the 4th century, when Christianity is legal, it's all the rage, we see these three big days have developed into many more commemorations, looking much like the liturgical year that we know now, with each one of these developing several different festival seasons. And as we go through the planning retreat with the different sessions that focus just on one season at a time, I'll be going deeper into the development of these things, not just because I find history fascinating, which I do, but because it opens up for us some of those things that we've forgotten about the season that have changed over time that can remind us, oh, Lent doesn't have to just be about giving something up. It could be about preparing for a renewal of our baptism. So we go back into the earlier stages and we say, what could we do with this? So what happened with humanity is that as we began to migrate from one city to another, that's what a holy see is, that we begin to migrate and we begin to have pilgrimages. During Holy Week, we'll talk about, in our Holy Week session, talk about this journey with Egeria, this 4th century pilgrim that just opens up so much about what was happening in pilgrimages to Jerusalem in the 4th century. And they would go, oh, cool, look at that, let's do that. And they take it home and do it at home. It's happening still today. That's what we're doing right now, is the Worship Design Studio is helping us migrate to one another. It's like ancient crowdsourcing, right? That's what was happening. And historians said that we originated with lots of diversity and then we moved toward uniformity. And I say whatever. I don't think we've ever been uniform in the way that we celebrate and express these stories in our human longing. I think we've always been diverse, and I actually think that's a good thing. So, friends, still, we humans continue to find ways to ritualize that human yearning, that human longing. And this liturgical year that we've done, this really brief burst of a history, developed as we begin to find more and more rituals, ways of expressing our deep longing. And so I want to turn theological, but a bit sort of what do I want to say? It's theological, but it's also about our soteriology. That's a big fancy word that we learn in seminary for studying the way that, who are we? What's going on with us, right? And so let's take a look at it, the journey of the liturgical year as an organization of the story of faith and its messages, as it intersects with our human longing in the form of ritualizing or worshiping, right? So it's going to be the intersection of our life and our faith stories. And so Advent, Christmas, that cycle, for me, I can see our human yearning for the presence of wonder, something beyond what we have right now. That question, is that all there is, right? There's a great song like that. Is this all there is? Something beyond, something more. There's got to be, our search for meaning is also a search for a deeper experience of life. Something planted and born within us. So we're going to think about questions to ponder about each one of these seasons along the way. And as designers, as worship designers, taking in the context of where we are is also about asking the right questions, right? To get out the right message for this year, for this Advent Christmas. Because friends, Advent comes around every year, as we know, right? And we tell that story again. And so how is it that we will tell it this year that will connect to where we are. And so asking a question like, what will the Spirit birth in this church in this time, right? How can we see this not as a time of just death and mourning, which it is for many reasons. Also the death of our understanding of who we are as compassionate people. I have seen deep compassion, and I have seen the opposite of compassion in so many ways. The unveiling of the incessant systemic racism. It is a death of sorts that needs to happen, but how can we also ask what is being birthed? What are we moving towards, right? So then Epiphany happens, which is the culmination of the Advent Christmas cycle. In the Worship Design Studio, we call that ordinary time between Epiphany and Lent. I call it Epiphany Plus. It's a series of weeks that changes every year, the amount of weeks, because Easter changes, the date of Easter. But it is a time at the beginning of the year that's ripe for looking at the new year, at the epiphanies, perhaps, staying in that sense of epiphany, that revelation, this yearning for illumination. This is a deeply human yearning for knowing, for discovery, for relationship. Oftentimes the scriptures in the Revised Common Lectionary are looking at people discovering who Jesus is. This is not your ordinary teacher, right? They're discovering, he's healing, he's teaching, he's turning things upside down. He's bringing a new perspective, and people, the holy is being revealed through him. And so it's a good time for us to perhaps ask ourselves, who are we together as these disciples of Jesus Christ? Where is understanding and insight needed in our church right now? What needs to be revealed? We'll have our session on Epiphany Plus in the fall. And one of the reasons to stretch these out is because we'll know a little bit more in October when we do this about what's happening perhaps with a vaccine, what's happening, so to spread these out helps us to see and answer these questions with a little more insight. And still, we're going to have to be adaptable, right? Because who knows what will happen between October and January. But at least we will keep our ear to the ground so that we might keep answering these questions in different ways. For those of you who are already registered for the retreat and are going to be joining me for each session, we'll revisit these questions. So I'll bring these slides back up and we'll focus deeply on these. But today is just to give you an overview and sort of set the context. So Lent is a time of yearning to be fully known, to be accepted, to be transparent, to lay it all out on the table. I do believe that Lent, in my lifetime, Lent has become a deeply revered season of the liturgical year in mainline Protestantism in a way that it wasn't just before my lifetime. I mean, in my lifetime, I saw in my little rural United Methodist Church in Missouri, I saw the development of this and the focus on this liturgical year, partly due to the liturgical movement of the mid-20th century. But Lent has become this time when we're very tuned in. And so I believe it's going to be an extraordinary time this coming liturgical year. And so asking the question, what are the deep questions for a congregation that are a result of having lived through, this past year since the last Lent, where in the midst of Lent, we were thrown into a sort of just a new global awareness. So what will the deep questions be for our congregation in Lent? And what will that journey be like? And what are we journeying towards? So Easter comes, but not without going deep into suffering. And that is in Holy Week. We yearn for comfort in suffering, making sense of the pain of life, crying justice in the midst of injustice. And as I look at this slide right now, I think, my Lord, I feel like we're living months of Holy Week. And some people will tell you they feel like they've been living years and a lifetime of Holy Week as we consider those who have been systemically oppressed. And so this is so important for us. It's too easy for us to skip from Palm Sunday to Easter Sunday. And some of us are privileged enough to think we can do that. And yet that is not life, and that is not real. That is delusion if we continue to think that way. And so to allow the events of Holy Week, the narrative of Holy Week, to help us to ask the question, can we be more present to the suffering of others, or even our own suffering? Oh, our North American, especially Protestant sort of, I don't know, I come from generations of, just don't talk about the hard stuff. Um, and so we begin to do that at the detriment of our spirits. And so how can we be more present to suffering across the board? So how will we do that in Holy Week, but how can we live in this Holy Week of life at the moment? So we are an Easter people. Our story does say that death does not have the last word. And so this is the hope. This is why it's important for every Sunday to be a little Easter, right? We can be tuned into a series theme that helps us dig deeper into difficult topics, but we also say that there is good news in the midst of it. We don't jump too fast to it, but we do know that in the midst lives the good news. The tombs are becoming the wombs of new birth. And so Easter is that penultimate for the church, right? It was the first year festival in the yearly cycle, that penultimate celebration. And that expression that we yearn for purpose, renewal, new life in the midst of death, for starting again. Anybody who has hit rock bottom can tell you that do-overs are redemptive. And I find myself wanting a do-over, on a regular basis. And we live in the faith story that says reconciliation is possible, redemption is possible, renewal is possible. And so in Easter, we might say, how can we truly live as Easter people? Without fear of death, cognizant of death, but knowing that we have the agency to call on resources of prayer, of hope, of joy, of peace, of love winning out over death. The Easter season, sometimes we forget that Easter is an entire season, my friends. And thank God, because we need to be reminded in a big way that joy, not just happiness, right, but deep joy, even in the midst of the difficulty, is part of what we believe we can have. The joy of life, the joie de vivre, the celebration. And so asking ourselves, what holds us back from this is a great question in the Easter season. What holds us back from daring to dance our dance fully? What holds us back from our agency to make a difference in the world, to put our energy into the purpose of making a better world? We need that focus all through the Easter season. And then Pentecost is the culmination of the Easter season. It's not a liturgical season unto itself. Sometimes people erroneously say, oh, it's the 25th Sunday of Pentecost. No, it's after Pentecost, which I think saying it that way is a little difficult. But it is the end of the Easter season cycle and the beginning of half of the year of ordinary time. But Pentecost itself has become a real focus for our churches. And I'm so glad of this, because it is about naming our purpose. Naming that common purpose, remembering that the Spirit moves in and through the church, in and through all people, for a sense of empowerment to make the world a better place. How can this church affirm and strengthen its purpose is a great question to start off ordinary time. And ordinary time is not ordinary, ordinal is actually where it comes from. And that word means a counting of, and we count, that's why we count until 25th, 26th Sunday after Pentecost. But I'm going to just use the word play as we're looking at the soteriology at our human condition. We do have ordinary lives, right, most of the time, and yet the holy breaks in. And we yearn for the extraordinary along life's journey. And so finding the extraordinary in the ordinary is one of the things that what we do in ordinary time as we discern the directions to go, the spiritual journeys to be on. We say, what could deepen our experience of ordinary life, right? What could deepen our experience so that we might live lives fully with meaning and purpose in comfort and in challenge. So friends, this is the intersections of human experience and divine intervention, I call it, right? The revelation, the inbreaking, mysterion in Greek, sacramentum in Latin, this breaking in of the holy on our human experience. And the liturgical year is such a wonderful journey to take because it gives us an organization of questions, of ways that we can address our human yearning. We address who we are, what matters to us, what we yearn for, and whose we are. That's where the faith narrative comes in, because a lot of people do who we are and what matters to us, what we yearn for. They do that really well, right? But whose we are is the intersection of our faith, our particular faith journey, in answer to all of those questions. So here's what I would really love for you to do in this moment, is to take a deep breath. I just threw a lot at you. Again, as we go through the whole retreat, those of you who are signed up for the whole journey, we will be coming back to these and digging deeper into each one. But for now, I invite you to imagine how these questions, these human yearnings on the local level, perhaps are shared in part with humans across our land, from community to community, from city to city, from country to country. Our common humanity demands of us what is important for the survival, not just the survival, but the thriving of the human race, of the planet, of the beautiful resources of all creation that God has given us. What questions can we ask in our places? What messages do we need to hear this year? So I want to invite you to take just a moment now. I'm going to play a little bit of music. Take a moment to jot down 6 core messages that, as you heard me speak, perhaps came to the surface. Don't try to attach it to any part of the liturgical year right now. What are 6 core messages? For example, do not be afraid is one that has come to me in my discerning around Advent, which we'll hear more about later. I'll let you know what I'm thinking about. That you think your congregation is longing to or needs to hear, to know deeply with you in these moments. So would you just take a moment to jot down those 6 things? You could write more, you can write less, it doesn't matter, but shoot for 6. Just take a moment. as you're considering this, I invite you, if you'd like to put what you're writing in the chat. You don't have to, of course. But if you'd like to share that with each other, it might inspire others. Take just another minute. Beautiful things in the chat, I see. Beautiful messages. I will make the chat available, excerpts from the chat available for those of you who are watching by recording. Wonderful. Okay, deep breath. So friends, as I said, we'll be diving deeper into each one of these in our sessions. As I've said, I've spread these out rather than doing a big 3 days in a row because I don't want you to get too zoomed out. We're going to spread these out, and so that we can be more timely. And somebody put in the chat, and yes, it's true. We're going to be looking at things that will happen next year in the fall, and because we are planning ahead, but we need to stay adaptable. We have a big election coming up that could create a lot of difference in many different ways and unknown ways. But I believe that there's a way to plan ahead, and we're going to get into that we're about to go into our second part. We can plan ahead and also be ready to improvise, be ready to adapt, be ready to turn on a dime without upsetting the apple cart too much. In other words, without getting too super stressed. And I'm going to walk through with you all of this. Let me just say that to those of you who may be joining us, I teach, I'm so grateful to teach a lot of Unitarian Universalists, so we may have some of those folks coming. And one of the reasons why I believe it's important to look at the liturgical year from a ritual study standpoint is that what I'm trying to model, even though you don't follow the liturgical year or the Christian calendar, the Christian story solely, you bring in lots of traditions, this whole idea of looking at a time of year or a context or sacred texts in light of deeper questions about human yearning and how the life story and the faith story intersect, no matter what that faith story is. This is something that I hope that you will continue to see as a a model of the way that I'm doing that, even though you may not be following exactly the Christian calendar. I do want to say that one of our trainers, Kelly, is a Unitarian Universalist and has a Unitarian Universalist group in the Worship Design Studio that work actively to utilize some of our materials in that context. So check that out. So every session we will be looking at the context. What has changed about the context since last we met? What particulars are we dealing with now? How is that affecting what we're doing and what we're planning on doing? We'll look a little bit more at the history of the season, as I said, to sort of broaden our horizons about the theological messages. We'll look at the theology of the season, the deep theological roots of every season, so that we can discern how that faith story is intersecting with that context. I'll tell you what I've been studying and seeing happening in the lectionaries, both the Revised Common Lectionary, which year B is what we're heading into, and the Narrative Lectionary, year 3 is what we're heading into. I will give you lots of series ideas and suggestions. I'll brainstorm with you. I'll give you techniques for the season based on what's happening as it unfolds in our world. That's what will happen in each one of the sessions. And I just wanted you to know how we're going to build on what we're doing today. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I wonder, Jenna, are there some questions on this first section of 3 that we're doing that we need to address before we move on?
I think you've addressed most of the questions that have come up already, Marcia. We had a couple of folks from multi-faith congregations wondering how they can adapt for their own context. Yep. And we just got another question about the other retreat sessions and where people can go to find out more information.
Right. Great. Well, yeah, some of you who are not registered already for the whole retreat, you can go to worshipdesignstudio.com/planning retreat. And Jenna, you've probably put that in the chat, or you will again. And there are several different ways you can do that. You can do one session at a time if you're not sure and you just like to join us for Advent. You can just sign up for Advent, or you can sign up for the whole kit and caboodle. It's much more economical to do it that way. And you can do just the sessions, or you can actually do the sessions and add a Worship Design Studio subscription, which gives you access to all of our 12 years worth of series. And that is a $299 value. And so that plus the retreat is the biggest discount we give on the retreat or on the subscription. So it's a really great deal and a great way to get a lot of help this year. And because we are on a new platform where we are super connected as a community, you get to walk through the year with, move through the year with a whole lot of other churches, support and, make new friends and be able to, share that with people. And it's especially important for smaller churches where, you might not have access to as much colleague support as you'd like. So, all right, great. Well, let's shake out a right hand, shake out a left hand, shake out what you're sitting on. And we're going to move to the second part. We're going to get nitty gritty about how in the heck do we plan ahead? What's the number one key that I believe can help us as we plan ahead when we actually don't know what's happening, when we're really not sure what the next step is. And so our second section, the number one key to planning in uncertain times. So friends, what I believe the number one key, let me just put it right out there, and that is flexibility. And friends, that's the last time my leg got that high. So I hold on to that picture. Yes, once upon a time you had that much flexibility. Now I just have to translate that into flexibility in my life, right? So what I mean by flexibility is compilation, adaptation, and improvisation, all right? Ation, that suffix ation, means movement, right? It means being able to move freely, and that's what flexibility does. It helps us to move freely, and that's what we need in a time when we want to plan ahead so that we're not just doing, this week after week after week, planning what we're going to do for the next week, one-hit wonders. It's just not sustainable and also have a good quality of sensory-rich worship. It's just, this incessant. Sunday comes around every week. It's incessant. And we must offer something to our people. And so this sense of movement, freely moving. So compiling, right, compilation means that we start far enough ahead of time to compile elements together, to be able to then have the elements, and if something changes close to when we're going to implement the elements, we can easily move things around a bit. All right, so but we have to start with something. We have to start with elements. We have to have something to compile, right? So if we just wait and say, I can't plan until I know what's happening, and we do it week to week, it's just, we don't have the tools at our fingertips to move freely and to see how we might be adaptable. Adaptation, of course, is to take what we have and say, how many different ways can we offer this? And that's the reality of the situation, right? The reality of the situation is that we will have several different congregations. As we come back, it's going to happen in stages. The great news is that we may have a vaccine before we thought we might. We're crossing our fingers. We have these amazing people who are acting as guinea pigs in these tests so that we might, move this along. But even when we do have a vaccine, it's not going to happen all at the same time, and it will happen in stages. So you may have some people who are at less risk who are able to come back to the sanctuary at some point. Some of you are doing that now. Some of you did that and then you had to back up, right? Because of the surge. You're still going to have at-risk populations who will not be able to come back to the sanctuary until the all clear. And so you may have people who never come back. We have a lot of people who are, there's some people who weren't coming to a couple of ways. Some people weren't coming to the sanctuary anyway already. Now they're able to worship because you put it online or you've been sending out resources. And what? All of a sudden we're going to cut them off? I don't think so. That's just not, I don't think we're ever going to be able to do that and just say, oh, we just do worship at our space and sorry, you can't be there. I don't think we're going back. So you're going to have that population, but you're also going to have a population that is going to have continuing health problems because of this or other health things. So we don't know how people are going to be affected long term with this virus, but I can imagine that we're going to continue to want to be adaptable. Take the same material that we're doing in the sanctuary and be able to continue to offer it in other ways. I just don't see going back. And then improvisation, that happens when we see perhaps we have something planned even for Sunday coming up and then something happens and we need to address it. And that is the real deal, right? And people often say, well, I don't plan ahead, I don't do series because something might happen. I think I'm going to tell you a little bit about why I think series are important. And those of you who follow lectionary, I want you to stop in your tracks right now and understand that following the lectionary is not antithetical to series. And I'm going to tell you more about that in a moment. But don't tune out just because I just said the word series, okay? But I think there's so many advantages to doing series that we can't let the fact that stuff is happening all the time keep us from creating deeply rich spiritual journeys for the congregation. We just have to be able to improvise and to see how the metaphors and the stories we're working with can dance with what's going on. And then there are times, of course, where something happens where we must stop and completely turn our attention to that. And that takes improvisation as well. So the first thing I want to say, and I already alluded to it, was that I believe flexibility is actually made more possible when we create worship series. And you'll notice, those of you who have not studied with me before, creating worship series rather than sermon series. I call them worship series because too often I have been to churches where we get to the sermon and somebody says, the preacher says, well, we're doing a sermon series on blah, blah, blah. And I go, oh, great. I wish I'd known that at the opening song, because that would have made that song make a whole lot more sense, right? So I'm talking about a holistic way of planning where all the worship arts are contributing to the message. Right? And the series means that we get a multi-week journey, often based on the liturgical season, or in ordinary time, we're going to use some self-determined chunks of time, but a multi-week time to dig deeper and deeper and go into that journey. And actually the lectionary, Revised Common Lectionary, was compiled based on the liturgical year, and so it's kind of built in. So it lends itself to series. So let's take a little look, a little deeper look about why creating in series. So it creates a communal spiritual journey. Some of you have heard me tell this story before, but I had lunch with a bishop one time, and he said, Marcia, why do we have to plan, well, why don't we have to have worship series? Why can't I just preach whatever's on my heart that day? And I said, well, Bishop, you can, because basically that's what you say to a bishop. But consider this, right? I said, if you do that, then your community is captive to your spiritual journey, rather than you as a preacher being a commentator on the spiritual journey of the community. Do you see the difference there? So what it means is that, yes, as the preacher or pastor, you are going to be the visionary. You're going to help discern. You are going to discern the spiritual journey to be on out of looking deeply at the context and the theology of the season and texts and what the community needs at the moment or what the community is asking for. You're going to discern that direction, but then you are one of the commentators. Music is also a commentator on that message. Visual arts and media arts and dramatic arts, all also commentators. The sermon is a very specific art form, but it's just one art form among many. And so I want to look at a holistic communal journey. What you see right here is Heart of the Matter was an Easter season series that I put out there. Many of you used it. I put it out there for free this year because we were turning on a dime, and I felt called to create something that would be a spiritual communal journey for that Easter season time. And this is some of the crowdsourcing and sharing of people who were doing that series. And what you see is that there's so much when you have a series over time. You get the time to get contributions from others. You get to have a structure wherein you create participation, and it doesn't have to happen just one Sunday and then you're off of it. You can build on it. And so it really becomes a spiritual journey. Another reason why series are really important is that as worship designers, it deepens our own spiritual journeys, right? So instead of spending our time in design freaking out and being stressed because I'm designing for this Sunday coming up, that's a lot of stress. And then you just choose the first right thing rather than taking the time to really study what it is that you're creating. This is a picture of my front porch and my setup as I was designing a series last year called A Wonderful Life that was based on looking at money in a spiritual way, good for stewardship season. And it really was a deeply spiritual journey for me because I had money issues of my own to deal with, right? Don't we all? And because I started far enough in advance, I got the time to deal with my own stuff so that then when I am creating the preaching notes, or in your case, when you're preparing to preach, you have the spiritual depth and this fodder within your own journey, having had prepared for this, to deepen your journey so that you are able to offer your deepest self in the doing of it. So another reason is that it helps us remember and reinforce messages over time, right? The way our brains work, what we know is that repetition is really important for a message to stick. And what we know about one-hit wonder Sundays is that they can be amazing. And if they're amazing enough, they'll be they'll be unforgettable. But it's likely that what we need to do is revisit a message over time, go deeper into it, look at it from a different angle. And series help us do this. These pictures are pictures that we use to suggest visual settings for a Jeremiah series. 1 year, the lectionary in fall ordinary time went through Jeremiah. And so I took that journey, and the book of Jeremiah and the prophecies and the imagery of pottery and being broken and remolded, just so rich. And so our visual settings can help us from these whole pictures of whole vessels into a broken vessel. And so it helps to reinforce and solidify that in repetition, so that if we have pottery in our home, perhaps we begin to, when we encounter it casually, that message piques our memory again. We remember that message of being remolded by the potter. So there's the aha and the oh yeah factor within series. The creativity and repetition, it's the container for the new and the familiar. Some of you who did my series, Heart of the Matter, in Easter, we based it on the Acts scriptures about the early church gathering in their homes. How perfect was that? And so for prayer time, one of the things that I did was I invited people to have worry stones. This is a thing that happens not just in the Christian tradition, but in people in general, is to objects that you hold to remind you, like when you're worrying, to sort of displace your worries, to calm yourself down. And so putting hearts on those, creating those, and holding those during prayer time as part of the liturgy. That was a new thing the first Sunday, right? A new thing for prayer. Oh, we've never prayed this way before. We've never picked up rocks, held worry stones to pray. But as the Easter season went on, it became a familiar thing through repetition. So we get both the aha and the oh yeah, because we get to do a new thing that then becomes familiar. We always want to have that balance of familiar and new. And this way we can create new rituals that have their reason based deeply in the theology or the context of the time. Certainly the worry stone came out of brainstorming about, just how worried we all were and are. So series can do that. It also helps the worship team not get burned out doing sensory rich worship. And this is super important. We want for our worship to be, to use the best of what we have. But friends, I know you are producing videos weekly, and if you do a different thing every week, that is a lot to expect. That you are going to compile some photos and videos and music and do that weekly. And what we can do with series is we can create something that then gets tweaked here and there. Those of you who did or are doing my Beguiled by Beauty series, you know that the video package that we made for the threshold moment, the beginning of it was the same every time, but then some of the images changed week to week based on the message of that week. I want to show you, in the Worship Design Studio, we've been sharing with each other some of these video projects, and all my subscribers, you're invited tomorrow. We're going to talk more about video editing. If you're at the very beginning of learning to do that, I'm going to, help you see that, how to do some of the basics of that. But Mariana Gill from Hazelwood Christian Church uploaded, like many of you did, some of your homemade threshold moment videos that you've been learning to do. And I want to play this one. They did a great job. This is the Roll Down Justice series from the Worship Design Studio. And so let me play this, and you'll see it at one point. The beginning is about the general series, and then it goes into what would be specific to that first Sunday, that they will change each time, but they don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. So let's take a look.
In a world that seems obsessed with who is right or wrong, good or bad, in or out, or on this side or that side, it is a radical endeavor to name each person as child of God, no matter what people say. This indeed is where love of the other begins. Love for the self, as God loves us.
Thank you, Hazelwood Christian Church, for allowing me to share that. But what you can see is that with a series, you can create, this musical piece. You can create the elements. This is that compilation piece I'm talking about, right? You can compile some of those elements, and then you can tweak every week for each one of the Sundays. And so it helps us to do rich things, sensory rich things, but not get burned out, because we're not trying to reinvent the wheel, do something new every Sunday. So it also acts as an on-ramp for visitors, right? And so getting the word out. Some of you are experiencing that people who would not normally come to your church, either by geography or because they haven't been churchgoers, are able to access your worship these days and recordings of your worship. And so, creating a focus for a season, for a series that really helps to invite people into a spiritual journey is one blessing that we can have. And if you get that word out, ahead of time, starting April 27th, this was from, this is an Easter season series, Resurrection Stories. Do you need one for your life? Well, yeah. And then you can get the word out. Call it publicity, call it evangelism. It doesn't really matter. So flexibility, creating worship series. This is one of the things that I think will help us be flexible. And that is that as we're working, you might think, well, if we decide on something, how is that flexible? Well, it's flexible in that, our brains are elastic. And so we don't have to, if we really have given thought, there are times when we have to turn on a dime and we have to throw it out and say, nope, that's not going to happen because this happened, right? And we have to be ready for that. But for the most part, our brains are flexible, they're elastic, and they like to connect seemingly dissimilar things. So if we discern a series that is broad enough, there's a lot of ways that different occurrences, different happenings can fit within that. So we're going to look at staying somewhat broad in our overarching themes so that we can have flexibility within it, but also to have gone in a direction and begin to create things allows us to be flexible in the way that we then take the pieces that we need to change each week and be able to do that week after. We're not talking about creating things so far ahead that we've already got it all done and we've hit render, right? Export. I never used these words before because people didn't really know them, but we don't hit export, weeks before, but we've compiled things. We insert the things that at the last minute we need to insert before we hit export, which is what we do with live worship, right? Okay, so the other thing that is going to lend to flexibility that perhaps you're going to say as well, what? That's even more nailed down, is create worship, what I call worship scripts. Now, scripts are different from bulletins or what I call a worship guide. Scripts have the rubrics in it. They have all the leader words written out, introductions to the reading of sacred text, introductions to songs. They have who says what. They don't have the whole sermon in it, but they have everything that you need for leaders to lead. And I use these in live worship, right? But I have found they have come in so handy as I have tried to offer the flexibility of different ways of doing worship formats in this COVID time. So let's take a look at that. When you create scripts, these can be made into various formats for the same worship substance. So what this is going to do is to help you if the scripts, one of the things you do beforehand is create these scripts, then you can more easily put that out into the world in many different ways and have it led by different people, right? Because it's all there. It's all there. So for our Heart of the Matter series, I created at-home editions, right? So that is your script that you have for leaders. You delete some of the stuff that says, start the music under this, blah, blah, blah. That kind of thing that you would do either live or online. And you just have the rubrics are to the people who are reading it at home, right? So whether they're emailed scripts, which you can if you have some basically tech-savvy people who are going to be looking at this on their computer, they can click a YouTube link and listen to some music, right? So you can have that right in your script. Or if you're going to print it out and deliver it, which I know a lot of people are still doing because they don't have people who are tech savvy, or some of their people are not tech savvy. And so people can use that as a devotional that they read with the people who are in their bubble, right? Who they're living with. Or maybe they do it with one other person over the phone that they can connect with. But the service is there in that script, and they can read through that. They can, where it says find a candle to light a candle, they can do that. You can let people know when you deliver it, or you can deliver a candle with it, that kind of thing, right? So you can do this, you can use the script then for a teleconference, right? So people who are not internet savvy or don't have enough internet to do computer, you can use good old video conference, teleconferencing. Back in at 9/11, 2001, I was supposed to be leading worship at a conference, and this was back before Zoom, right? was really on the horizon. So basically, I led worship over the phone, and so you have to describe some things, right? And it just gets more verbally descriptive, but you can do that over the phone. You can then use these scripts in your pre-recorded videos, compilations, your Zoom conference where you export video in, your online gathering, perhaps plus a pilgrimage kind of experience. This is something I put out there on Facebook Live one day a few weeks ago. You can find the recording in the Worship Design Studio or on my YouTube channel. But this idea that even before we can get back into our congregations for a sit down in the room worship, that we could invite people to come and pilgrimage around the grounds or through the church so that they can be in their sacred space for just a moment. So, doing these combinations of things. Or in-person worship. So what we're going to be doing this year is, of course, creating these scripts that are adaptable for either doing online or in-person worship, or both. But also, we probably still will be creating musical videos of singing that we will play in the sanctuary, even if we are physically in the sanctuary. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about my Advent Christmas series that I'm working on in just a moment. And we're going to be thinking about that reality. These scripts can help us, if we have them done early enough, can help us create all these multiple ways, these flexible ways of reaching people in various formats with the same worship substance. We start from that script and then we can adapt them here and there. Some of our at-home scripts, like I have here, may have pictures with them because people are not going to be watching the moving pictures on the Zoom or on the pre-recorded video, YouTube video that we have gotten accustomed to accompanying some of our things. And so you might want to print that. So creating scripts is part of being able to be flexible. So it's not about doing less and waiting so that we can have ultimate flexibility. It's about preparing so that then we can take what we have compiled, adapt, and improvise when we need to. I hope that's making sense. So as promised, I'm going to tell you what I'm doing for Advent Christmas. I will have a part of it done for our Advent session August 12th so that you can begin to plan to use that if you want to. This picture you're seeing here is one of my inspiration pictures. And as I was discerning where I wanted to go with a worship design studio series for this Advent Christmas, I just kept in my mind's eye seeing empty sanctuaries, right? And so here's some of the pictures that I just compiled of that with some beautiful lighting. And what I imagined, this picture I just brought up on the lower right is actually Eastern Orthodox churches at the Easter Vigil, which feels a lot like Christmas Eve for Western churches because they give out the light, the first light, right, on Easter Eve in the middle of the night. So it just made me think of Christmas Eve and how will we do this? So at any rate, these were images that inspired me. And one of the things that I suggested years ago in the worship design studio that some churches did that I'm going to suggest this year as well, and that is making the whole sanctuary the Advent wreath, rather than the Advent wreath being a little wreath, or whatever size you have. But having the four corners of the sanctuary be the four visual installations that are part of the wreath. You might even think about using greenery from one to the next to sort of give a wreath sense. And then that Christ candle in the center of the center aisle. And I can imagine taking photos of our sanctuaries with that scenario and letting that be what I call an anchor image, that in the emptiness of our spirits, sometimes in the emptying of our expectations, of our that a light still shines. And so one of the series that I had designed 8 years ago is called I Believe Even When. And so I had a conversation with my friend Mark Miller, longtime colleague and friend, decades now, from when we were pups, started working together. And Mark is, as many of you know, such a spiritual leader wherever he goes, whatever situation he's in. He's a beautiful musician, beautiful composer of congregational song, but also of choral works. And so we started talking about our choirs, our singing ensembles. And right now in summer, when we're not, a lot of choirs take summer off. And so they may not be as cognizant right now of how difficult it will be when September rolls around, and they usually come back. But I have a feeling that's going to be a difficult thing, spiritually, emotionally. So Mark and I wanted to do a project together that would help choirs have something to prepare for through the fall, and teach churches, if you don't know how to already, how to make these beautiful compilation videos of singers singing an anthem, a song, and have your choirs working on that so that you can use that in Advent Christmas. And whether you're in the sanctuary and projecting that, because it's still going to be dicey for people to be singing, especially choirs singing in close proximity, and or whether you're still online. We don't know yet. Still online, or both, right? So being adaptable. We wanted to provide a way for choirs to get excited. And so we're going to use this series that I did, I Believe Even When, that highlighted, he has an anthem called I Believe Even When. And it's beautiful. So that was a do-it-yourself, what I call a do-it-yourself series, where I provide ideas and then people put together their own order of worship 8 years ago. I'm going to turn it into a fully scripted series. I'm adapting it for our context, for our time, the themes. So let me just read this to you. Do not be afraid, the messengers. That comes up so many times in Scripture. The history of humanity is fraught with pain, especially the pain that comes accompanied by fear and leads to oppression and violence of one people against another. This is the world into which Jesus was born and through which his teachings would challenge and call for transformation. The opening words of an anonymous Jewish poet, I believe in the sun even when the sun is not shining, were scrawled on a wall during the Holocaust. They will call us to examine humanity's penchant for annihilating fear by annihilating each other. This Advent will engage the scriptural narrative that calls us to a different response, reconciliation through hope, love, joy, and peace. Let us affirm and act on the reasons why we can still believe even when we are discouraged. And so his anthem is, I believe in the sun even when the sun is not shining. I believe in love even when I don't feel it. I believe in God even when God is silent, based on an adaptation of the Jewish prayer. There's a lot of different stories about the origins of it and the actual wording of it, but suffice it to say, it points us toward a time in history that keeps repeating itself, and that is our penchant for trying to destroy one another. And then the fourth one, I believe in the light, I believe in the light that has come and is coming. And then the Sunday after Christmas, it will be facing the future. It's time. The scripture in the lectionary usually is the flight to Egypt. And so really ending the series with, it's time. It's time for us to face the future and to bring more hope, peace, love, joy into the world. So I will be reconfiguring that series. I think that those churches in Worship Design Studio have been with me for a long time that's already used this. I think that it will be different enough from what you did before that you might want to go ahead and do it again. I know that the churches who did it, the anthem is just spectacular, and your choirs loved doing it. Mark is going to also be suggesting anthems for every Sunday, and then coaching your choirs on how to put that together. So we're very excited that we will be able to do this series that focuses on all the worship arts, but especially gives your choirs something special to do. So the Advent Christmas Planning Retreat session is August 12th. Again, I will offer ideas from Worship Design Studio series, but I will also help you discern and create your own themes. My point is not for you to always use my themes. My point is to teach you the process of designing, and that's what we're about to do in this last third part, is some very practical things about design that will also help you not get burned out trying to keep up a level of sensory rich worship that is so difficult to do because we're exhausted, because there's a lot that we're dealing with in this time. And I'm going to walk with you, move with you all through the year, helping you to learn to do this. Some people like to use our series along the way because it gives them a jump start to the first part of the process, and it helps them to get their folks excited about beginning with specific tasks to put it together without spending a lot of time on the beginning parts of deciding what you're going to do. But I also very much like to teach people how to fish rather than just give the fish. So it's a both and. So I'm going to stop here for just a moment and see. I have not been looking at the chat. So Jenna, I will not know what questions are there. What can we do before we do this last bit? What do I need to address?
So a couple of questions have come up, folks, especially who are concerned that they will not be able to be back in their sanctuaries at all during Advent Christmas. So what kind of adaptations will they be able to do with this series, especially the metaphor of the sanctuary as the Advent for virtual worship?
Right. So it's called B-roll. So you're going to set your sanctuary up like that. How poignant for people to get to see where they usually sit. So it's all about video and photographs, right? And inserting that into your online worship so that they get a sense. Yesterday, one of our Worship Design Studio subscribers posted a video of their opening of their new series that they're doing. I think they're using Blessed to Me series. And they had this video of coming into the church through the narthex. They had a shot of the table where you usually get your name tag or whatever, coming through the doors into, and the subtitle said, "Come on in, take your seat, you are welcome here." And it was so, I thought, oh, how wonderful. If that was my church, how wonderful to have that visual. So really we're talking about if you're completely online. And this is what I'm doing with all my new series that I'm putting out there, is that I am creating with the thought in mind that you're doing completely online, because for some people it will be. We know that. We already know that the soonest we're going to have a vaccine will be, they're saying November, which is, they don't know yet. That's if the trials go okay, but it's still not going to happen that everybody's going to have that. That's really close to Advent. So I'm just assuming we're not going to be in our sanctuaries in a big way, right? So the idea of having your sanctuary set up that way is so you can take pictures and video of that so that people can see. And the whole idea is that we are wrapped in those attributes of the holy, right? We are wrapped, even though we're not there. We are there and we can visually put ourselves there and imagine ourselves as community virtually. So that's, it will be designed for online worship and for adaptation if you are in your sanctuaries by some miracle, that you will be able to do some of those things. You'll still have to be showing those videos of your choirs because they're just not going to be able to sing in front of your congregation. The aerosols are too much with even a few people singing. So it will be done for online, and then you'll adapt and improvise as we get closer.
Another question, what series do you recommend pulling back from Advent for the rest of ordinary time into the fall?
Yeah. So I just did on Thursdays, I do a live meeting, Zoom meeting with my subscribers. And last time I suggested 6 different ones in the Worship Design Studio, if you're a subscriber, that you have access to. I've mentioned some of them because people are doing them. Roll Down Justice is a wonderful one. It was originally for Lent, but we redid it for any time. The Blessed to Me series, which focuses on Celtic spirituality and blessings. I'm trying to think what the 6 were now. I'm just like trying to pull it up. If you're a subscriber, you can go to our subscriber group in the Worship Design Studio, and you can go to Live Thursdays with Marcia, and you can see that bit where I describe all of those. But yeah, ordinary time, there's a lot of different directions you can go. The Jeremiah one would be wonderful, talking about the brokenness. I have one that's based on beach glass as an anchor image of brokenness and healing and that kind of thing. Come to the Table is one that focuses on coming around the table and community. And you can talk about what is it that how can we share with one another even though we're not at the same table. Yeah. I do see Brenda's, have I ever done a season of creation series? I have always encouraged people to look at that material. So you can go to seasonofcreation.com or .org. Two different, one is Australian and one is Roman Catholic, becoming ecumenical, but focusing on creation. And I do have the series that I did this summer. If for those of you who haven't used it, you can get it a la carte if you're not a subscriber or you have access to it as a subscriber, and it's called Beguiled by Beauty, Living a Life of Contemplation and Compassion. And it's a 6-week series, and people who have done it have really had great response from their folks. And so that is a 6-week series. If you have not done it, would totally work right now. You can go to worshipdesignstudio.com/beauty and find out about it. Help with how to do sensory-rich worship when in person and online simultaneously. So yes, so sensory-rich happens in many ways. The threshold moment video that you just saw from one of our subscribers is sensory-rich because we've got layers, what I call layering going on. We have visuals, we have words, we have music. And at one point, we have a spoken synopsis, an introduction to the service. That is sensory rich, right? The prayer that I talked about from Heart of the Matter, that is a worry stone in the hand. That is a sensory rich, tactile, kinesthetic experience that you can have online, or you can do that in the sanctuary. If you were to take, if you mean by simultaneously, like you're live streaming your in-person worship, I think that you can do, I think you want to do, because singing is dicey, music is dicey. This beautiful one that somebody posted of the Blessed to Me theme song with an oboe. Wind instruments is dicey in person right now. So go ahead and make a video of that. Show that video in your in-person worship so you get that richness of music, you get the richness of the oboe, but also show that in your live streamed or your online, right? So you're use media and use these videos you're making even when you're in person, right? So that you can still have the richness of those things. You are not going to hand out things like stones. You're not going to distribute things in your in-person worship, but you could invite people to bring one, right? So there are some tactile kinesthetic things that you can do online that you can't do in person right now, right? So you may invite people in that time to imagine, if you're at home, get a stone, find a stone, hold that stone. If you're here with me in person, when you get home, find a stone, make a heart on that stone, and use that throughout the week, right? So you're just going to have to continually be improvising your adaptations for any one thing to follow the protocols, right? The CDC protocols. So I hope that helps. Yeah, so your sanctuary is large. You can't project video or pictures. I get that. You might want to use recordings, audio recordings of the same thing that you're showing in video. And if a photo is really important, you're going to put that on your worship guide, or you're going to, if you're not using worship guides because you don't want to pass out paper, you might have that on an easel where people can see it as they come in. This is the improvisation, friends. This is why in the Worship Design Studio, I create series and then I say, you have to adapt. I have a job and you have a job. I'm going to put the ideas out there, and then you are going to use your improvisational skills to adapt for your context. And there are so many different scenarios. So let's imagine that in order to be back and to use projection, as we get closer, let's say Advent, that you have a Sunday morning online kind of thing, but then you have a more evening setting when your sanctuary is not as bright. People would adapt. People would come at night because you're having to adapt for this time. They want to come back in their space so much that if that's the barrier to having a rich experience, say the series is about light and we want to go when we can be at a time where we can have our choir singing on video and we can see, I'm brainstorming here, right? You're thinking of 1,000 reasons why you can't because so-and-so would have a fit. Whatever. You have to work that out, but I'm just throwing out the ideas. Okay, Jenna, we've got to get to our third one, but are there any other questions?
I have one back to the Advent series.
Okay.
You mentioned working with Mark Miller and sharing info for choirs on recording for worship.
Yeah.
Will you be doing a workshop on how to record with choir members present in their homes? What kind of software to use?
Yes, that's all part of it. So I'm going to speak much more in our Advent webinar on the 12th of August about all of these things. So that was just a little teaser taste. This is what's coming because I know a lot of you are starting to think about what you're going to do about Advent, but all these detailed questions, we'll save them for them. I want to get to our third and final part of this webinar, which is about how do we do this sensory rich stuff without getting burnout. All right, so let's go there, go back to sharing my screen, and we're going to get into this third one, staying creative and productive without burning out. All right, so how do we do that? Boom, organizational structure is the key. All right, so what do I mean by that? Early on in my seminary career, studies, I decided that along with theology, I wanted to study creativity. And creativity as part of theological inquiry, or the theology of creativity, process theology was very attractive to me, but also about creative processes. I did lots of interviews with theologians, but also with designers, people who design different things for a living. And so that I could learn really great structures, organizational structures for worship planning, because I knew that this design work as a performing artist in my first career, musical theater, I had lots of design and production in my background, and I wanted to marry that to my theological studies. So what I know is that creativity loves structure, right? We don't create out of nothing. Only the holy does that. Only God creates out of nothing, right? We create out of the stuff that's around us, which is a really great thing, but we have to have a structure or a way, a process to do that creativity, to say, here's my raw materials. Now what do I do with that, right? Productivity loves a schedule, all right? So people who say, oh, I have to wait until the last minute because the pressure of the last minute is really what gets me going. Okay, great. But you probably have alienated all the people that you work with because they don't want that stress. So what we do is we give ourselves earlier deadlines. We treat them as if that is drop-down deadline, and then so that we can help the teamwork and not stress everybody out around us, okay? And teamwork, speaking of which, loves clarity. And so knowing what the process is, what our roles are in the process, is such a great way of building a positive team atmosphere. Now, some of you are saying, I don't have a team. I am a one-person team, right? I'm in a small church. I do it all. So I'm going to say to you, whether you think you have a team or not, that's a stereotypical idea of what a team is. You still have people who can help you do stuff. So I'm just going to throw out an example so that you can buy into this you have a team thing. Let's say that Aunt Mabel has been at your church for a long time, and she loves that hymnal. She loves singing out of that hymnal. She loves everything about that hymnal. Well, maybe not everything, Maybe there's a couple hymns she doesn't love. You know Mabel, right? But you say to Mabel, we're about to do a series where light is the anchor image. It's the main thing. Would you go through the Advent Christmas section of the hymnal, or any part of the hymnal? Would you use that index and make me a list of hymns about light? All right? And then you don't have her decide what Sundays that's going to go on, but you have asked her to do a task that actually is going to benefit you when you do start putting hymns in certain Sundays. And you're going to have had somebody do the legwork. And then when you sing that hymn, whether that's online or you're just listening to it in the sanctuary in Advent, Mabel's going to say, I helped pick that hymn, right? So you have ways of doing, and I'm gonna help you all the way through the planning retreat. In every session, we're gonna devote a little bit of time to teamwork, right? And helping you get help, right? So that you don't get too burned out. Those of you who are not registered for the retreat, if you want to continue to be part of this, I would love for you to do that. I'm going to tell you at the end how you can do that. And again, this design process is something that I will be walking you through. If you're not going to be part of the retreat, or even if you are, you can get my book, Think Like a Filmmaker, Sensory-Rich Worship Design for Unforgettable Messages. This whole process is outlined in that book as well. There is you can be a free member on the Worship Design Studio, and there is a free book study for that you can go through with your team. That's another way to do it, but I would love to walk with you through this for this planning retreat this year. But my design process, we start with context. That's what we started with today. So you take context plus text equals a working title, right? So you're going to be discerning. You're going to be coming up with a working title for the series. You're going to be studying the lectionary. If you're going to follow the lectionary, you're going to be putting that in conversation with the context. What are the messages? Those things that you began to write down. What are the messages we need to proclaim at this time? And you're going to come up with a working title. That's the first step. All right. Then the next thing that I do is I deal with what I call an anchor image. All right. So this picture that I showed you is one of the informative things that helped me to begin to imagine this sense of emptiness, and yet this sense of, I imagined a light in the middle of that labyrinth, the sense of the presence of hope in the midst of emptiness, right? And so I began to work with that. There we go. So we create a symbolic language or a feel for the series, right? And that is when we begin to look for other images, for, a picture is, equal to 1,000 words. And so we begin to look. What is, the image on the left is a cairn that you might use for My God is a Rock in a Weary Land. There's another series that would be good for ordinary time coming up. And that is My God is a Rock in a Weary Land, kind of the assurance, the steadfast presence. On the right, we have a star and a light. I had a series a couple of years ago that was on the 200th anniversary of Silent Night, and the star was the anchor image, right? That beacon was the anchor image. And so the next thing I do is I start to create anchor images, and I will help you do that as we go from one season to the next. The next thing I do is frames, and frames are the unfolding of the message from week to week. This is kind of like the frames of a film, right? And how the story is going to unfold. It means that literally the very down and practical thing this is that you're going to come up with titles for all of the services in the series, and that might be based on an excerpt of words from the scripture, or it might be based on other things, like the one I'm doing is based on the verses of that anthem, and then I'm going to tie that to the scriptures in the synopsis. So we're writing a synopsis, and I'm going to help you develop that. But you see, the scripture and synopses, if you go into the Worship Design Studio, or if you go to worshipdesignstudio.com/series, and you go into any one of our a la carte series, you'll be able to see my scriptures and synopses for each week of the series. And that is gold as preparation for then starting to put together the series. But when you start with that, you start with something very concrete, and that's when teamwork loves clarity. So visionaries, this is primarily your job, is to say this is the direction, right? And when you're planning ahead, this is also gold for when you get this back out later, when you start to really get into the nitty-gritty, and you look at your titles, and if you haven't written a couple of sentences about each one, about what you're thinking about the direction, you look at your titles and you go, what was I thinking, right? But if you have a couple of sentences that remind you, it's also a jumping off point for your sermon. It's also something you will use in your threshold moment, which I'll get to in just a moment. So you're going to develop these things. And it happens along a timeline, the title and main synopsis. I will be encouraging you to do that right away after each one of our sessions on that particular season. You have enough then to actually begin to create a series trailer, right? And I'll show you a trailer in a moment. But this is sort of an introduction to let people know what's happening. You've got images, you've got a synopsis. You may even have a theme song that you've got in mind, or just some music you can put underneath. The weekly titles then and synopses, you begin to write those out. Not all in one fell swoop, or it may come to you all in one fell swoop. We don't limit the Spirit, right? If it's coming to you, you just sit down, you write those. But it may be a little time after. And then you create a threshold moment, which is what I call the beginning of worship, right? Not the welcome and announcements, but after that, how do we start the ritual journey? Okay, and then we brainstorm in all of the worship arts, the resource gathering. That's the example that I gave of asking the person in the choir to make a list of songs for you. That's brainstorm and resource gathering. We're not yet editing, so we don't have to make decisions, so we get people to help us. All right. And then what happens is that we, out of the brainstorming and the resource gathering, we begin to come up with threads. So innovation plus repetition equals rich ritual, right? We talked about that. That series can help us do that. So for instance, this idea of being invited to light a candle at home that we had in our opening devotional, that could be part of the beginning every time, right? That you have that, and you have that bell. I found that bell sound effect. Boom, bell, right? And I'm going to have that in each one. Maybe I'm videoing a different candle each one, or maybe it's just the same thing. All right, so then the elements of threads are visual elements. What are some of those things that visually are going to pop up time and again, like the pottery, like the Advent wreath? Maybe you ask people to create that wreath in their room, their living room at home. Maybe you have candles in 4 corners of the room that they get to light as you light that in the sanctuary, as the video of lighting that in the sanctuary comes up on their screen. So that could make that visual element alive and 3-dimensional for them. A ritual action, that would be a ritual action that would be repeated every time. Sometimes it's verbal form, sometimes musical themes. So let's take a look at some examples there. Let's look at a trailer. This is from the Angels Among Us series. And friends, I actually think if you haven't done this series, this could be an interesting series for this year as well. So you might want to consider this. Let's just take a look at the So that was our trailer to let people know about it. How do I get out of this? There we go. This is a new tool. This is Prezi that I'm using right now. New tool. Those of you who want to know more about using more software, just trying it out. So there's a theme song, right? So that's a thread. A thread can also be a visual and an action. So we have an anchor image visual. The feather is the anchor image, and it finds its way into different things. We had churches who made keychains to give to people so that they could keep that reminder on their keychain that there are angels among us and that we are called to be those messengers of hope in the midst of difficulty. Some churches did murals of angel wings so that people could take their picture. They put it outside their churches, and then hashtag angels among us or hashtag hope, and create different memes to thank, especially this year, could be to thank those angels among us who are working so hard to help us overcome this time of virus, of pandemic. So then we actually think about verbal repeated forms. And so in that series, there may be something that repeats. Holy living God, blessed Jesus, guiding spirit, alight us within us your flame of hope this day. This happens as the candle gets lit, right? Grant us courage to be your messengers in the world, creating more hope in the midst of fear. And the brackets around more hope mean that the next week it's going to say creating more love in the face of fear, or more joy in the midst of fear, right? So you don't have to create new words for every service. People love repetition, and it's such a great device within a series to keep some verbal forms that repeat for something ritual like that, lighting the candle, and just tweaking it for each service. So friends, the next thing that happens, the last thing, are scripts and guides. And basically what I do is I design the first week, and then I duplicate the first week, and I go in and I tweak the things that need to change from week to week. Like in that prayer, I would change more hope into more peace. I would change the scripture, of course, would be different. I would change the hymns and the songs, right? Although we may have a thread song that's in the threshold moment, the beginning of worship, that would stay the same. And so basically, I am creating all the scripts in one fell swoop. And of course, I'm going to tweak them as we go. Again, I'm not going to hit export. I'm not going to hit, this is in stone, weeks ahead of time, but I have it ready so that then I can, as things unfold, I can improvise, I can adapt, because I have compiled. All right. Then what I do, delete. What do I mean? I delete the rubrics and the leader-only text in my scripts to create my worship guides, what I call bulletins, right? And so I start with scripts. I don't start with the bulletin because the bulletin is too much plug and play. I'm going to start with the script. I'm going to create everything, and then I'm going to repeat, tweak, and then delete for worship guides. So it's a very, very concrete process that I can promise you, as people have begun to use this, that it has helped them relieve some stress because they know what to expect, right? It's clear, we know what to do, that kind of thing. So let me show you the last thing I want to show you before we sign off. I know we're almost there, and this I'm very excited about. Our Canva maven, Shelley Walters, who is one of our Worship Design Studio associates. We are partnering with Canva to create templates so that we can share templates with you to create inspiration pages and create all kinds of things for both our series and your series, so that you can change things out, you can change pictures out, you can put your information on things. We're very, very excited about this. There's so many churches who are using Canva already. It's free for nonprofits to use, which is super wonderful, which is really one of the reasons why I landed on Canva. And so Shelley is going to help us begin to use these templates for our design process, so that we can really offer beautiful and inspirational printed, and I don't mean just print as in tangible paper, but also things that we can use on our websites, on our social media, in our videos, all of that kind of thing. So that's very, very exciting. This is a worship design studio, longtime worship design studio member, Kelly Turney, sent me yesterday. She created these beautiful, out of Canva, things to send to her congregation that go with the Beguiled by Beauty series. And so one of the great things about the Worship Design Studio, and it being this place where we can share our ideas, is that you will be part of a group, friends, a special group of people who are doing this design, this planning retreat, and we will share with each other these kinds of resources. And so I invite you to become a very active part of that, because you're going to get out of it, you know, the effort that you put into it to actually connect in many different ways. Or you can just watch the sessions each time, and I hope that will be a help to you as well. So August 12th is our next session. Join us if you're not already signed up. It is $150 for all 6 sessions for your whole team. This is per church. And then if you want to add a Worship Design Studio year-long subscription, this is true for those of you who just want to renew your subscription, because you know this is a great deal. It's usually $2.99 just for the subscription, but you're getting the retreat along with it. And that is a great combination for us being able to resource you throughout the year. And we have a few slots left. I have a coaching cohort group that I will be meeting with after the sessions. Each one of the sessions, we'll be letting some time pass, and then I'll be meeting in a Zoom meeting with a very limited number of churches who want to do this and be able to show me what they're working on, and I will brainstorm in live time with them. We have a few of those spots left if you'd like to do that. So you can go to worshipdesignstudio.com/planning retreat, see all of those options, including the just one at a time. You can, for $50, you can just come to the Advent Christmas planning retreat as well. So friends, I am so, so very grateful for each and every one of you and what you are doing week in and week out. If there's any one thing that was helpful from this time, then I will be deeply grateful for this connection. Friends, my vocation, my call to ministry is to support you in your work, inviting you into processes that are life-giving, processes that can help give you clarity, can help you with the work that you're doing. And we are always here in the Worship Design Studio to be interacting with you in whatever you need. Subscribers, don't forget, tomorrow we're going to do a video editing session, a little tutorial, and so this is basic. So we're not going to, those of you who are using powerful things like Final Cut Pro, we're not going to get to that kind of thing. If you're at that level, you are doing great. This is really basics. For many of you told me that you would like to add this now that you realize this is going to last for a while. You would like to add this skill. And so we're going to do some of those basic things about how to edit videos with your content to add to your series. Jenna, anything we need for the good of the order at the end here?
I think we've got most of the questions. I just wanted to say, if there's anything that we have missed, please feel free to send us an email. You can email Marcia at marcia@marciamcfee.com, and I'm available to Jenna@marciamcfee.com.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you to my whole team who keeps this running. We are a small team, and we do our best, but we are committed to helping you and being with you, especially in this time, but moving forward. I hope that you will join me if you can for this planning retreat. So friends, let's do a blessing. I know you can't see each other right now, but I invite you to raise your hands in blessing, and may the peace and passion of the Holy One who guides us be with you now and forevermore. Amen. Thank you so much, everybody. Bye-bye.